Well, hi there. I'm Dr. Tom Ulrich, and I like to talk about leadership and engineering. Hey, in this video, I'd like to talk about one of the modern leadership theories called LMX, or Leader Member Exchange. Now, a couple things to know about it. First of all, LMX is one of the few major theories that's actively being researched, and major leadership theories. And so the ones that are really actively being researched by a lot of people is transformational leadership, of course. That's the one that has far and away the most published peer-reviewed journal articles. Servant leadership, which is, of course, a favorite of mine. Authentic leadership, and then finally leader-member exchange, and which is the topic of today's. And I actually don't have a count, but my guess, without a doubt, transformational leadership has the most number of peer-reviewed articles. My sense is probably LMX has the second most, although I'm not sure about that. It's certainly in the top four. At any rate, it was initially proposed by George Grain, actually in the 70s. Now, let me stop right there. You've heard me kind of rant and rave about modern leadership theories, and Barsati and Gibson have this idea of the affective revolution, which affect is like an umbrella term for mood and emotion and all that kind of touchy-feely stuff. And the big earthquake in the world of organizational leadership and leadership studies was this realization that kind of happened between about 2000 and 2005, this affective revolution, where everybody finally realized, gosh, employees' feelings matter. How they feel makes all the difference in the world. And, that's, of course, intuitively obvious, right? I mean, if you're an engineer and somebody yells at you, that's not when you do your best work. And having said that, I know there's a few people that actually seem to thrive on that. But when we talk about average behavior, that's certainly it's certainly the case that as a knowledge worker, you do your best work when you feel good. Now, having said that, let me clear up one bit of confusion. When we talk about this affective revolution being in the 2000-2005, we're not saying that any theory that was proposed before that time is sort of old school. What we're saying is any theory that pretty much the research evaporated after that time, that's old school. So for instance, transformational leadership, servant leadership, and LMX were all proposed before that time, but once the affective revolution occurred, the interest in researching those went up. So let's contrast that with situational leadership, with LPC, least preferred coworker theory, any number of other things. At the affective revolution, the interest in researching that went down. So LMX is unmistakably one of the modern leadership theories. Okay, so what's the basic idea of LMX? All right, so it's really very clear, very simple what the idea is. The idea is relationship is everything. So you can see how this very ties in with affective revolution. And what they do is they use some terms from psychology. They use the term dyad. Now, admittedly, when I first heard that, I thought that was one of the animal-like things from the Chronicles of Narnia. I mean, it sounds like a tree moving or something. But dyad is a highfalutin way of talking about sort of strength of relationship, or you have two people, and as they get to know each other, they develop dyads, so points of interest. So one thing I do, and by the way, here's a pro tip. About 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, I figured out that if you can talk football, talk NFL, you can have a conversation with about 80% of the people on the planet. And so what I do now is I actually follow NFL. I don't actually have a favorite team, but I do like the game. And what I found is, as you meet somebody new, if you discover they like football, you figure out what their team is, and instantly there's a dyad there. Oh, we talk football. And so, at any rate, that's kind of the idea, is you try to build these dyads. You're always looking for points of connection, and it doesn't have to be football. I mean, let's suppose, your hobby is quilting, okay? And then you meet another person who also likes quilting. I mean, you got one of these things. So kind of the idea of LMX theory is that you're intentionally looking to create these dyads between people. You're looking to build relationship. Why? Because what we know now is relationship is one of the fundamental characteristics of the modern leadership paradigms. You say, well, old school didn't do it. Well, that's right. You can be an old school manager and not have to bother with this. Well, why would we want to do the new school ones? Because all of the data, the overwhelming amount of data is that these new leadership paradigms correlate strongly with higher levels of productivity. So if you want to manage like it's 1972, well, that's just fine, but you're going to get productivity levels like it's 1972. If you want to be a world-class manager and get productivity where people are engaged and people are bringing their whole heart and all this crazy productivity, that's when you need the new paradigm. So your choice. At any rate, so one of the key ideas with LMX is there's inevitably then an in-group and an out-group. Now I know a lot of people like, oh, you're, being exclusive or elitist or whatever. But hear me out. Okay, here's what happens. We're trying to get everybody in the in-group. The leader naturally wants to get people in the in-group. We're not excluding anybody. The idea is the realization. You realize there is an in-group, there is an out-group. Well, what's an in-group? So in-group is the group of people that when you look at the relationship between the employee and the manager, so you look at the dyads, it's characterized by high levels of trust, mutual influence. Notice mutual, it's going both ways. If you're in the in-group, not only are you listening to the manager, but the manager's listening to you. So you have this two-way relationship. And finally, there is support. The follower is supporting the leader is supporting the follower. So you see this picture of they trust one another, they help each other become better, and they encourage one another. That's what it means to be in the in-group. Now the out-group is kind of the opposite of that. There's mistrust. By the way, trust, according to LMX theory, is one of the most important aspects of leadership. Therefore, to the degree to which people trust you is the degree to which you'll be effective as a leader. So the next time you're thinking, hey, let's not, the due date is August, but let's tell them May so that they work harder. Okay, that may sound like a good idea. That's definitely old school. Here's the problem. The minute they figure out that they were coming in weekends to meet an artificial deadline is the point that you have forever lost your trust. So when you pull stuff like that, it's only transient in its effect. It will only work until they figure out you're lying to them. And then from there on else, they're going to start, these are engineers, these are smart people. They're going to say, all right, if he says May, he really means August. And if he says June, he really means September. See, we people figure this out. And it's more than just a simple calibration. It's a loss of trust in all of the benefits of having this strong relationship are lost. Let me put that another way. When you lie to your people, you cut your own legs off. At any rate, so the basic idea is in-group and out-group. And then the task becomes trying to get people into the in-group. Now, the research shows that, we have this sort of pie in the sky, everybody will want to be in the in-group. That's actually not true. What we found was some people will choose to be in the out-group permanently. Whoa, I fell through a wormhole. Now I'm in a different conference room. I wonder if that was related to that little knock on the door we heard just... No, I fell through a wormhole. At any rate, what we found is some people self-select. They simply don't want to have a good relationship with the manager. And, shocking. Well, okay, let's think about this. Some leaders refuse to get on board with the modern leadership paradigms. Well, that's also true with some followers. The thing about and a lot of this can be pre-existing things. I mean, if somebody with 30 years experience and they've just kind of been conditioned to not trust their manager, and all of a sudden you say, I want you to enter this trusting relationship. I mean, that just isn't going to work. Some people are simply going to self-select out. So it's pie in the sky, dream world to think that everybody's going to choose to do this. But the key is that's what you're striving for. You're specifically looking to develop relationships. All right, so toward that end, how do these relationships develop? Well, there's one researcher, Mary Olbein, really brilliant researcher, and she's done a lot of research on LMX also. And she looked at how the relationships develop from being sort of out group to in group, and she proposed a 3-phase model that I think is helpful because, we've all met people who you just meet them and they start sharing details of their personal life that are like, okay, you're a stranger, I don't want to hear this. I mean, it's a real weird thing if you share lots of details with a stranger. That's just like weird, right? Okay, so here's Mary Olbein's model, which is, you recognize first you're strangers. You're the leader, they're the follower. You're strangers. And then you develop this, so you sort of hopefully develop to this phase of acquaintance. So you move from stranger to acquaintance, and that generally is by building the dyad. So you're looking for points of commonality. You ride a motorcycle, you come in, you see a motorcycle helmet, you discover you both like motorcycles, and now that's kind of your go-to topic. And over time, then you also discover that you like to watch basketball, they like to watch basketball. Now you have 2 points of of connection, and you sort of, these are almost sort of go-to conversations. So now there's almost never a lack of what to talk about. You don't ever have that sort of awkward, what do I talk about this person? You've already established there's a couple points of commonality, and the idea is you kind of keep building those things. And, of course, at some point your engineering expertise really needs to be, one of those dyads. Anyway, so you go from stranger to acquaintance, and over time then you develop into partners. And it's really the partners, that's the in-group, the strangers, that's the out-group, and the acquaintance is sort of that middle ground. You're kind of on the way. So now, having said that, then what does all the research boil down to? And like I mentioned, there's lots and lots of research on this. So relationships with employees is good. Okay, that's worth quilting on a pillow. Okay, relationships good. And in case you're kind of thinking about this wrong, thinking like, okay, well, there's my boss, and then there's me, and then there's the Bob who works for me. I want to sort of jealously guard, Bob, so that my boss isn't the one who has a friendship, only I do. Okay, that is completely wrong thinking. So what the relationship found is you get even more benefits of LMX if it's sort of 2 levels. So you're friends with Bob, the best thing to do is to encourage your friend to be with Bob. And that's why, for instance, if you're like the big leader, you want to get to know the people who are a couple levels down. At any rate, so the idea is you want to get all these relationships, you get better productivity, you get better job retention, you get better job satisfaction. I mean, the list of measurables just won't quit. LMX is simply a great idea, and all of the research suggests that you and your company will experience all kinds of good results by simply taking a relational view of leadership. When you're a leader, you're in the people business. When you're a leader, you're in the relationship business. Okay, so that's the whole modern leadership paradigm in a nutshell. At any rate, that's what I've got on Leader Member Exchange. Thanks for listening. Hey, you can find more videos by me. You can go to tomulrichconsulting.com. I've got a pull down there. On YouTube, I think you can search on Dr. Tom Ulrich. I think you can also search on Engineering Leadership Guy. At any rate, thanks for listening. And on YouTube, if you could subscribe, that would be amazing. Anyway, thank you very much.